Even this path, which is the most modest of all paths of resistance, will not be easy for us, but it is much easier than self-immolation or a hunger strike. The flames will not envelop your body, your eyeballs will not burst from the heat, and brown bread and clean water will always be available to your family. A great people of Europe, the Czechoslovaks, whom we betrayed and deceived, haven't they shown us how vulnerable Brest can stand up, even against tanks if there is a worthy heart within it? You say it will not be easy? But it will be easiest of all possible resources. It will not be an easy choice for a body, but it is only one for a soul. No, it is not an easy path, but there are already people, even dozens of them, who over the years have maintained all these points and live by the truth. So you will not be the first to take this path, but will join those who have already taken it. This path will be easier and shorter for all of us if we take it by mutual efforts and in close rank. If there are thousands of us, they will not be able to do anything with us. If there are tens of thousands of us, then we would not even recognize our country. If we are too frightened, then we should stop complaining that someone is suffocating us. We ourselves are doing it. Let us then bow down even more. Let us wait, and our brothers, the biologists, will help to bring nearer the day when they are able to read that our thoughts are worthless and hopeless. And if we get cold feet, even taking this step, then we are worthless and hopeless. The scorn of Pushkin should be directed to us. Why should cattle have the gifts of freedom? Their heritage from generation to generation is the belled yoke and the lash. The belled yoke and the lash. So if you can hear me now, I see I've been talking to Vingul there in the chat. Let me know if you can hear me coming through. Loud enough and the quality is okay. And, I went to same audio level as intro. Good stuff. Excellent. Thank you. So I appreciate that. And I was, sometimes phrases go through my mind and I wonder where I got them from. And I say, I know that from somewhere. And a lot of the time it's because I've read it out. I mean, those are the words there of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And I don't know exactly how long ago it was. Like, it was more than a year ago, maybe 2 years ago when I did that video. But it was just a case of reading out the words from Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Live Not by Lies. And that's the last couple of minutes of it, basically. And now that I'm on X, I'll call it X because I think, interestingly enough, I'll tell you now in a second, I thought that it would be easier to say that letter, because how could YouTube's ears that are always listening to us, how could they possibly know that I meant something other than just simply the 24th letter of the alphabet, right? Or the English alphabet anyway. But no, they do, because I recently played back some of my video that I did there the other day during the week. And it does take a while. Like, I did a live stream there on Wednesday, and it takes a little while. And what I've noticed now, and I don't know if it's just for naughty boys or with people like me who maybe say things that maybe the algorithm doesn't quite understand, and it just assumes that if it doesn't quite know what we're talking about, then we must be talking about contraband stuff. Contraband thoughts is all I'm talking about. But I noticed that it had capitalized the letter X. And so I went, all right, okay, well, I mean, it is impressive what they're able to do with, I suppose we'll call it their AI ability to understand what's going on based on context. And I read somewhere whereby AI is able to, whichever variations of versions of them that there are, that AI is able to now understand what's going on when it sees a meme. Like, if it sees an image and some text, it's able to somehow contextualize that with some audio and get it, right? And know what's happening, right? Which I have to say, I always kind of got to give your adversary some credit when it's due. Like that is impressive. Um, but at the same time, it's important to maintain a balance and not to allow some realization like that to, I suppose, darken your perspective and kind of go, oh, right, well, there's no point in even trying because they have us beat before we even start. No point in even showing up to the races because they've got it all sewn up every which way from Sunday. But part of their operations, part of their tactics is to demoralize us. Now, of course, I'm just saying a few general things here. You kind of got to ease into these things, that sort of way. And I have to sort of gather my thoughts. And, anytime I go live, right? I always regret. I always say to myself, I had plenty of time there to prepare. And now it's always in the last 10, 15 minutes. I'm going, oh, damn it. Upload. I forgot I have no background for this. Oh, StreamYard's changed. Where do I put this again? And I'm using StreamYard right now for the last few times I did lives. I won't say the software because no point in telling them, right? But I was using a different streaming software and it has pros and cons. And one of the things I like about it is that if you forget to upload something, you can just share it like from your desktop. But with StreamYard, you kind of go, all right, I'll just put this picture up. And then it goes, no, I can't find any pictures in that folder. And you go, but it's there. And then you realize, oh no, I've got to convert every picture to a PDF, right? Otherwise, it doesn't recognize JPEGs. I mean, you would think StreamYard would do that, wouldn't you? Or PNGs or anything, right? GIFs, nothing. No, it all has to be a PDF. Anyway, look, this is not interesting stuff, but well, maybe it might be just slightly interesting. Anyway, I'm just letting you know I'm a human being talking to you here, and I sort of said, right, a lot of people do these intros, and there's always a 20-second delay, and so it's useful to have some music playing, count you in, instead of going, click live, I'm alive, that sort of stuff, right? So here we are. But what I also hope to do is keep a few of you around here listening until we get into it. And also, whatever AI is listening to us might kind of go, listen, this is nothing. What's this guy talking about? I mean, it's the kind of nonsense that I'm not sticking around for. He might go away and leave us to chat. You know what I mean? And that's what I hope. So we'll get going properly with it in a minute, but I won't, meander for too long. Old man with a gold pan. He says, yay. How are you doing, Matt? I made another EE live. Cheers all. He says, I'm still at work. So y'all will be mostly in my pocket. Don't worry. I'll let you out from time to time. Just keep us, I don't know, in a side pocket, right? Keep it all nice and hygienic. So, yeah, look, I deliberately left the title a bit vague there, and it can convey anything. It's basically just past, present, future. It might put you in mind of any number of things, and one of the obvious things might be, well, you have the present in the future, which we're always in, this continuous present where the party is always right. And I'm quoting 1984 because wasn't it also in the party's sort of moniker or motto that he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future, something along those lines. But it works a lot of different ways. And look, one of the things, and I'm kind of starting to get into it, and you understand this is a very, very broad topic. I mean, I'm talking about everything and nothing all at the same time. But they have controlled the past ever since you and I were born. And I'm saying, like, you and me and anybody, because even if you are 90 something right now, you were practically only born yesterday insofar as this game that's been going on has been playing out for. And even if you are 100 listening to me now, the media has been controlling, in whatever form it was, has been controlling your perceptions in a way that you never thought that they could. And it's a lot got to do with something called preconceptions, where not only do you think that you know what happened in the past, but, and you might identify with this like me, you think, well, even if I don't know what happened in the past, what's it got to do with what's going on now anyway? And like when I was a kid, lots of people said to me, if you don't know the past, of course, you're condemned to repeat it. The bad mistakes, the mistakes that everybody else makes. So if you don't learn from other people's mistakes, you're going to continue making the same mistakes they did, and you're not going to progress any further generation from generation. I mean, at the very least, right? If every generation, even if like we were all very slow on the uptake, if every generation would do just one thing, they don't even have to pass on any knowledge other than just one thing. You have just been dropped into the middle of a war that's been raging for centuries. And so don't think that there isn't an enemy out there just because you can't see him or recognize him. You don't hear him. You don't see it as a war in a way that you might recognize. Don't think for a moment that you have no foe. Don't think that you do not have an enemy. See, the biggest preconception, like, sorry, I suppose it's one of them, right? Because there are others. But I won't constantly try and correct myself as I'm about to say something. But the greatest disservice that my parents did to me, and I have to take a huge amount of the blame myself. The biggest mistake that I made, the most embarrassing preconception that I assumed, without ever questioning it or going back to examine it all, was that I was born after history ended. And a big part of what did that for me, and I've mentioned it before in some videos explicitly more or less titled this, and I've mentioned it in others. I thought that I was the first child to have been born not just in the modern age, but in living color, and that everybody who came before me, they lived in black and white. And I know, like, I'm talking about black and white TV versus color TV. And I'm gonna tell you this, like, it really is as stupid as this. I actually pretty much thought that everybody, from about the middle of the 60s or maybe 1970 and before that, actually lived their lives in the real world in black and white. It was like not just the beginning of The Wizard of Oz before the amazing Technicolor came in, and that always blew my mind when I saw that movie. But there was also a movie called Pleasantville, which came a lot later, and I think that might have came out in the late 90s. And it was there a guy called Jared in it, and there was a blonde one. I think that might have been the blonde one who did something like she did a sort of comedy series where she did that ditzy thing. No, sorry, it wasn't a series. Maybe there was one or two movies of it. Legally Blonde. Reese Witherspoon, was it? If it wasn't that, it was maybe she was in it. But anyway, somebody like that. And again, like, that gets it across that it wasn't just me. I knew when I saw that movie, it wasn't just me. That these were people living in the 50s, and they were lacking in technology. They were we thought they were simple-minded because they didn't have the technology we had. They didn't even have like VCRs. They didn't have video recorders, video tape recorders, VTRs they were called, or video cassette recorders. And like at one point that was the technology. Oh my God, you don't even have to go to the movie theater. You don't have to go to the cinema anymore. You can hold a whole movie just like in your hand and carry one movie with you on a cassette, and you can bring it home and play it in your own televisual room. Amazing, astounding. We thought that was high technology, and of course the not just the Zoomers but the millennials would absolutely roll around the floor laughing at people like me who once thought that was quite amazing. So anyway, point being there is that every generation thinks it's modern. Every generation thinks that the previous generation were simple-minded, and of course in the 1950s, sexually repressed. And that was a big theme of the movie there, that once the girl went from black and white to color, that she had grown into being a woman. Like her flower had blossomed, this sort of stuff, into full, I don't know if they called it Technicolor, but a vivid, vibrant color. And so it was like all the colors blooming, her petals were opening. I'm certainly not trying to be vulgar. I mean, if you were trying to analyze a poem or whatever, this would be the way that you would do it. And you would hear this in like English literature class, and maybe people, if they'd realized what the teacher was going on about, they might, weird. Something just went beep, beep, beep. Oh, sorry. Bear with me for a second, will you? I seem to be having technical issues. I got a warning for low power. So I'm going to have to check to see what I can do about that. 1 second. If this stream goes down, I'll start it up again. All right, we might be okay. I'll see how it goes. Right, I better take a pause there anyway. I felt like that was StreamYard saying, all right, come on, bring it back now, right? And I'll have a look at some of the audio here. Sorry, not audio. The text, the messages, right? Sometimes I forget real simple words. Okay, sorry about that. Vingol is saying maybe a bit louder, but good quality. Nothing better. Right? No, I can do something about that now. It's just, you know what happens is that it's not just StreamYard, but the operating system. I don't know if you can even turn it off. If it detects that I've spoken too loudly into the microphone at any point, it lowers the volume, and then it's much less prone to raise it up again if it thinks you're talking too quietly. But let me know how it's going, and I can raise it up sort of more mechanically if I need to. Damn it, maybe I will. I'll give it a smidge mechanically. Right. Anyway, thanks for being there, Vingol, and letting me know. Let's see if I could just get this out of the way. Okay. So, I know I read that out. Okay. Vingol says, apparently the algorithm cares more about the things you say in the first 5 or 10 minutes. No idea why that would be, just something I heard. Well, listen, I don't know what it does, but I'm always just trying to feel around in the dark and see what's going on, and that's what I'm guessing, but I have nothing to base that on. So yeah, he controls the past. It's sampled in a good techno track. Okay, I know you put a lot of techno tracks out there. Vingol says, I remember watching the beginning of The Wizard of Oz on TV with my grandfather, and it also blew my mind when the color came in. I'll say about that. When I was a kid, like my parents were very strict with me, and I wish they would have explained why. I mean, because thinking back now, I'm thinking they must have known, which is why I've spent years in my mind feeling so aggrieved that they didn't tell me what they were protecting me from. They just said, just do as you're told. We're not going to give you any explanation ever. You just obey us because we say so. That's it. Final word. There's no more to it, right? I figured, when I became a teenager, when I became, an elderly teenager, a late teenager, when I became an adult, I figured they would go, oh, by the way, the reason for all that was blah, blah, blah. They never. And well, obviously we have to be very careful about where we are here, but later on, much, much later, when I'd done some learning on my own, being out in the real world, I said to my mother, I said, I came to her and you know what I can't talk about. And I said, was it because of this? And she went, oh, yes, of course. Those people can be extremely vicious and spiteful. Oh yeah. Well, you want to watch out for them. Well, you might have let me know, 2 or 3 decades ago, and she was like, oh, did I not say so? Did I not tell you? And I was going, no, I think I would have remembered if you'd mentioned it, So anyway, but what can you do? But one of the things was, they were extremely strict with me, and I don't want to say, I was so hard done by, but I felt that I was quite deprived, and we were not allowed to have anything, we had an old TV, but we weren't allowed to get a new one because you watched too much of it already, right? And certainly not allowed to have a VCR because, you're always in front of the TV, so why? When there's nothing good on TV, then you have to go outside, right, in the fresh air. So why would I buy a VCR to put you in front of the TV anymore? So we just didn't have one, and it was the kind of thing whereby, if I would have said that to my friends, they'd go "What is wrong with you?" Of course, now you might say based, right? But I really felt that I was living in some kind of prison, where I had absolutely no amenities. So the only way I would be able to watch movies like that or to say like, "Hey, can we watch that and have a look at it?" Would be either if it ever came on TV, and it would generally be a thing that would come on at Christmas maybe, and you just around the Christmas time, and you'd have to just, or some holiday, and you'd have to be oh, listen, I'm like Grandpa Simpson now. We wore onions in our belt because that was the style at the time. But if one of the neighbours had a VCR, and there was maybe some neighbours that I might do a good turn for, and they might say, "Oh, thanks very much for doing that." Like when I was a kid, I was fairly handy and I could fix some things, And not trying to say I wasn't a great, but I might get onto that later because some of you guys, you're gonna be teaching your children about skills that are going to be important in the future. And so if I would fix something, then they'd say, "Do you want a sandwich or whatever?" I go, "Yeah, great." And so I go, "Do you have that Wizard of Oz movie?" And so I'd have a quick look at that, or at least some of it. And I'd always like when it went into color then, and land on the witch with the house and all this, and see her toe was curling back underneath the house. And now I know, of course, that there's a metaphor in that for the wicked witch of the east and the west and all this. But it wasn't until years later that I heard of the phrase "a friend of Dorothy," and then heard that it was, "Oh no, these people think that's their movie, and anyone who likes that movie must be one of them." I was like, "Oh, geez, really?" So they always ruin things like that for you as well. But anyway, I better get on with this stuff, and I'll come back to the idea of fixing things, whether it's electronics and stuff like that. Because look, there's other things to talk about that we can talk here on YouTube, and they might not seem directly related to. I'll call it the struggle, right? The struggle for survival in this. I'll call it a harsh economic climate, right? It's fine to put things that way, isn't it? And like little life skills and bits of knowledge that I might be able to pass on or learn with you as we talk. And, just might be useful to any of us out there. So, anyway, Vingul says, yeah, no, there's no need to adjust the volume. I'm just being autistic and pointing at it maybe a bit louder than the intro. And yeah, I have to keep an eye on it because I haven't figured a way. If I ever raise my voice, then the software says, I better lower it there. Right? And it never seems to kind of go, "Oh, listen, he's being a bit quiet. I'll now raise it up." It's like, it's like the government. They're very quick to take your taxes, but very slow to give it back to you if they've overcharged you. Anyway, I appreciate it. And let me know if it ever gets a little bit loud or low. He says, "I also hated being told something without explanation." I did too. It was something I was born with. It was part of my innate characteristic. And look, I think that is something, like all attributes or qualities, could be good, could be bad. But there comes a point in every child's life when you have to reason with him, or not just reason, but tell him your reasoning as to why. Because otherwise, what we end up with what we have now, right? We have a load of children who hated being told what to do, but not because they felt that there needed to be some logic or rationale in their lives. They just wanted to be the ones in charge. That's it. And as soon as they could get in charge, well, we've all seen what these people are like. The moment you give them, and I'm thinking particularly of like 4-ish years ago, the moment these people think they've been given any power over people, we've all seen how they tried to wield it. So you have to tell people that it's not good enough, no matter what your station in life is, to just dictate to people what to do, and never feel that you should owe them any explanation as to why. For a child, yeah, you might say, "Look, when I'm out with you in the world, I don't have time to explain to you everything we're doing, because you might get injured or hurt, or same thing. Any number of bad things might happen to you. And I simply, like, if I would take the time to explain everything to you, then that bad thing would have happened before you could understand. And anyway, there's a lot of things you can't understand. So I'll tell you bit by bit as it goes. But if you trust me and I show you that I'm trustworthy, then you can take my word for it most of the time. You have to build up that trust. And I think parents break a child's trust when they operate on their own emotions and just say, "I'm the boss now. I always hated being an underling. Now I'm the boss. I'm going to do now to others what was done to me." It's the wrong way of going about things, even though it might look the same to people who don't understand how really it seems to me like a tool, like a hammer, like a knife, like so many different things. I can't name them all, right? They're not bad or good in and of themselves. It all depends on the purpose of the hand that wields it, or the mind with the consciousness and the intention and the motivation, and that's what makes the difference. But what I will say, without flattering us, that anybody listening now, well, you never know, but we all got here. And what I mean here is on the path of truth, and we keep heading in this general direction because we didn't just do whatever people told us. We didn't just believe whatever people said was the truth. We said, well, let me see, or show me, or tell me why. And we knew instinctively that if people said, no, I don't have to, or you just have to believe me, or I've got a degree in that, do you? Or, well, 10 people agree with me. How many people agree with you? Or what I'm saying to you was said by this guy with a very impressive uniform in a very impressive building in a very impressive city somewhere. And so therefore you just have to believe. A lot of us, like, this is why they say out of the mouth of babes is it come the funniest things, or children say the darndest things. It's because they're not darndest. It's just that children haven't learned yet to just keep quiet and keep the head down, right? Children, instinctively know what's nonsense and what rings true, and they say it because nobody's ever trained them through successive series of disappointments and different ways of extinguishing the light or the curiosity behind their eyes. They haven't been browbeaten enough yet to sort of go, oh, why bother? They just kind of shrink into themselves then. So children who haven't had that sort of, bet out of them, they'll say, no, that's nonsense. Or they'll be petulant. So, when you have a petulant child who goes, no, I'm not doing that. Like, it could be because he's being a brat. But also it could be that he's calling out many adults, many grown children who are in large bodies, but they are children emotionally. They've never changed. And most adults, when I became an adult, I thought, oh, I'm 20 something now. Well, I guess we're all just still sort of late teenagers. And then when I got to 30, I went, yeah, look, it could be that just a lot of us have arrested development. And, this modern generation that I was born in, we don't really mature that fast. So maybe other people are in my same position. We haven't really copped onto ourselves yet. But the older I got, the more I realized, oh my God, why did nobody warn me? That's why they, say in religious circles or Christianity particularly, they might say we're all children of God. it's because people never grow out of a childish mentality. Most people get older, but they never get any more mature, certainly no wiser. And a lot of people just get into a position in life where they're able to exercise a bit of control over others, and maybe they have a family and they're able to bully their own family. And the retirement at home and everybody outside might think they're lovely, or maybe everybody in their workplace doesn't like them, but they have to do what he says because otherwise they don't know if they could get another job or whatever. This kind of way. They have us all sewn up and checkmated and stitched up like this. This is why they've promoted not just people who are incompetent, but people who, this term midwit, who have enough intelligence to be extremely self-serving. I mean, very few people are stupid that way. I remember remarking one time, and I'll come back now to the comments without waxing on too lyrical, or flitting from one idea to another without fully forming it. I remember there was a place where I used to live one time, and there was a fella who we used to call, sort of euphemistically in the Irish language, a Dinna Lydia, which means a person of God, a man. It's not a man. It's just, you could say a child of God. That's a better way of translating it. A child of God. But I think you might be able to understand where some of that kind of what used to be a sort of a very soft sense of humor, euphemistic sense of humor. What you really mean is somebody who's special in the mind, right? And that's also a euphemism, right? You know what I mean? They're very, very special minded. Like Simple Jack, but not Jack Torrance, that movie Simple Jack. There's just not a heck of a lot going on there. And sometimes there could be like a savant, that you can't say what IQ the fella has. Like, it could be, it's no way of measuring it. It doesn't really, the scale can't really be used to measure it. And he didn't really talk where you could understand what he was saying. But after like a few months, I could kind of generally know what he was sort of hemming and hawing about. And you knew that if he was talking to you, basically he was trying to see if he could annoy you long enough where you kind of go, oh, do you want a pint there? then whatever his name was, and he'd go, "Oh, I'll take one, yeah, yeah." And then he was well able to signify what he meant there. It was very clear cut. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And so you get him a pint, and then he might go away. And he was clever enough to know that if he sort of hung around you, right, eventually if he said, "Do you want a pint?" He'd go, "Yeah, great." You'd buy him one, and off he would feck. And you'd be like, "Great, okay." And you see, then you'd think like, for a few weeks, I thought, okay, I've figured this guy out now. Aren't I clever? I've learned something. And then it took me a few more weeks till I figured, no, 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 he figured me out first time, like, first time I walked in here, and he's clever. And here's me thinking I was clever, like he knows if he hangs around, right, talking something that I don't even know what he's saying. I have to go, "What's that? Say that again. What's that?" And I've said, "Sorry, I don't know what you're saying." And I've said this about 3, 4, 5 times now, and I'm going, I don't get it. Can anybody else translate for me? Right? And most people are laughing because nobody's gone this far with him. They've gone, "Sorry, what? Can you just say that last word again?" And I'm looking for something that'll unlock the whole sentence, right? And everybody else is, you know, so people start shaking with laughter, but there's no noise coming out of them, right? And they're trying to look elsewhere, look down look at the ground, look at the counter, right? They're all having a great laugh. So anyway, what they have promoted are many, many people who, and you don't have to be very clever to be self-serving, but they have the qualities like they have vindictiveness, spitefulness, long memories for I was going to say a slight, the most minor of insults that you might have made, completely untoward, unwittingly, but they've remembered, and they're just biding their time to get you. And you might find that you get some sideways promotion into their department, and it's all just so they can make your life a misery, all this sort of stuff. So that's why they've made our world. That's how and why they've made our world the way it is. They really do want to make this place a hell. And I'll just get this thought out before I come back to the comments here. No, I'll say this. I see. Sure, there's hardly that many there, I think. I'll just say hello to Wind War Attack. This is Harry John. Cheers, brother. Harry Wind War. And I'll come back to a couple more comments there. Lily says, "I'm on set at work." Oh my God, but I'm listening. On set. Oh God. Anyway, what I was going to say there was, yes, I'll give you this theory, right? And of course, like, nobody has to accept anything I'm saying, but like, what's the phrase? If the shoe fits or if the cap fits or whatever it is, just take a trial out of it, and examine it, throw it away if you don't like it. But I think that this is perhaps going to resonate with some people. Like, okay, maybe I best first introduce this. When MH70, I think it was what it was, or MH370, I think that was the first one. Then there was MH11, wasn't there? And whichever one was the first one, and then we don't know whether it went down off the coast of New Zealand or the west coast of Australia, or it went down in the Indian Ocean near Diego Garcia. This is something we can't even talk about. It's like one of many mysteries that they floated in front of us. And they wanted us to know about it. They wanted us to talk about it, just like everything. And then they took it out of the news cycle. And just like a lot of things, that thing that happened in, I'll say, I can say a city. I can say Las Vegas, right? Like, so they put it up, and then somebody from head office says, "No, take it down. And then they take it down. And then just actually like something else that happened recently, right? There was something that could have been as big as November 22nd, 1963. And at first people were saying, listen, we can't go near that. That can't be true. And then the left were getting in on it and conspiracy theorizing on it. And then they said, "No, take it down. And it almost has been memory hold. It's just amazing. But I'm just putting those ideas out there, right? To sort of say, particularly with the Malaysian Airlines thing, one of the theories was that because there were people who had, just a bizarre range, if we take it as true, bizarre range of occupations, like that some of the people, and you know what I can't say here if you know what I'm talking about, but there was one of the theories anyway that there was a microchip. I guess it doesn't matter which one, but it might have been one of those reduced instruction set chips, as they call it, that get used in well, smartphones, but also in, you can use these for anything, right? If you scale it up, the possibilities could make, what we have now, like say with NVIDIA graphics cards doing whatever floating point computing and AMD and all that, right? That mine currencies or do whatever, right? All this amazing AI crunching. I think these could revolutionize that or take it to the next iteration or maybe to the next exponential growth of that because of how much drastically reduced power that it uses. And so you can really scale stuff up when the next iteration of your chip uses so little power that you don't even have to cool it. For something like, so if you have 10 times the computational power and it doesn't even need cooling compared to what you had before, just the cost savings alone on that like are staggering as far as leveraging business profits, right? So that alone was one thing. If we just take it for the sake of discussion that it was on that plane, or like at least the people who either knew about it, had technical blueprints, had rights to the patents of it. So that was one thing. And another thing was then something, of course, we can't even mention on this platform, which was to do with the not nanotechnology of making CPUs, like down to the lithography of what do they call it? Were the chips something like, are they approaching something like less than 10 nanometers, something like that? And they're getting down to the level where, okay, now we have to go into quantum. But at least so they say. But then, so if we then say, okay, well, that's AI, what about down to the nano level then on cellular stuff, right? So what I heard as well is that those kind of people were on that plane, right? So, okay, it's a very, as far as plane manifests go, like all the souls on board, it could just all stories. But according to examining it within the frame of how they presented it to us, these were the stories out there. And so then you say, well, then this plane that vanished in such a mysterious way, we're now into probability on top of probability on top of probability. So we know something is going on. Now, I don't mean to be unfolding that in a way that makes it again too long to get to the point, but I think it's always good to examine a broad range of things, stretch out for a bit, and then come back in then. So coming back in then, here's a broad thing you can apply to anything, right? We know that they have many sort of modus operandi, if he's there. I don't see him, but maybe he is. So methods of operation. They have tactics that they use so often that we begin to not only recognize that it's them when they're doing it, or when it's in the news cycle, but we can predict like that when almost how and when it's going to happen, because there's certain sort of preemptive signals even before it happens. I'm not saying we're all very clever. It's just, we start to repeat. Sorry, we start to notice when patterns repeat. And one of the tactics is that supposing like a plane has 270, 300-ish people on, like if we're talking about a 737 or something like that, I think that's what it was, a Boeing 737. But however, a plane that is sort of a standard commercial type plane. And if there's roughly 300 people on board, if you have these clever people or influential people or whatever, and there might be 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 of them, at most, let's say anyway, 5 to 10% of the entire ship's manifest. Well, what about all those other people? And we saw like crying family members and all this sort of thing. Like, what about them? Well, I don't know. And sometimes we think, oh, they're just actors. Other times we think, no, they're real people and they just get on with their lives somehow. And they never get closure on it either. Or maybe some people come visiting them and we never get to hear about it, but whatever. But the point I'm actually trying to get, and there's many to make about this, but one thing is, and it just seems callous. That's why I had to pay tribute to those people. It seems a bit callous to come up with these sort of clinically cold takes. But one of them is that one of their tactics is that they have absolutely no problem with having collateral damage. And in fact, it's necessary. Like if we think about lots of these so-called, Well, you know when somebody is aghast at something, when somebody is feels that their world has been shook or rocked, and they feel angst and they feel anxiety. So there's another word beginning with T, right? So those kind of attacks, right, on places, whether it be a plane, whether it be a building, whether it be an institution or people in any kind of social setting, it makes people think, oh my God, it could happen to anybody anywhere. It paralyzes it all with fear. And they like that. And what they like about the collateral damage is they don't we're not dealing with the kind of people who kind of go, oh, what I want to do is get rid of these people who are in the way of my plans, or if I get rid of them, it's going to help me with another aspect of my plan, etc., etc., or get rid of my competition or so on. They don't spend any time whatsoever saying, oh, I hope those people don't have families, or you never know how there might be knock-on consequences of these things, unforeseen consequences, unintended effects. No, they want that. They want collateral damage. It acts like a smokescreen, and it also creates all these false leads. They know there's going to be randomness with a whole load of these people's lives, and they know we're going to investigate every single one of them, or spend years arguing about who is a crisis actor and who isn't. Maybe shouldn't have said that word, you know. But yeah, it's one of the tactics that they use so often, that it's how we kind of come to know instinctively as inquisitive children. We're dealing with people who show us who they are by the things that they do. So we recognize them by their fruit. And I suppose, look, without waxing on too much more lyrically, I'll just scroll back there to see if I might have missed anything, and read whatever comments are there. So feel free to throw any in there. And bear in mind, I'm probably working on a 20-second delay here. My most vivid memories, says Vingo, of watching TV with my grandfather was watching Allo Allo and Band of Brothers. No way. Well, those would have been, I assume, separated by at least a decade or maybe two. Two very different World War II series. Yes, indeed. He was a soldier in the war, German side. Good memories. Look, I didn't mean to labor the point, but I actually think this is, I can say something here. So in case anybody doesn't know, Allo Allo was a British TV series, and I think that I remember it was a BBC TV series, comedy series, roughly a half an hour. And it was, you would think, well, it's a comedy. And yes, and it was set in France, Vichy France, I suppose. Well, not I suppose, of course it was. So German occupied France in World War II, but hey, straight away went into territory where I'm like, you know, is this going to be friendly to? We'll see how we go. But it was a comedy, and it sort of made everybody look ridiculous. It was quite fair. It was quite fair. Like, it made the Germans look ridiculous. It made the French look ridiculous. And it made the British look ridiculous, and all of them were stereotyped. But it was done in a way that was, you could tell, like it was a gentle way. There was actually love for everybody in it. There was no vindictiveness in it. But what I have noticed about people who make art of any kind, I'll call it art, right? Anything that you can look at or hear or read or anything really. It could be even something that you touch, and so on. But look, a lot of the times the artist doesn't really know what they're doing. Like, they really can be just channeling their subconscious, or even, you know, spirits or God or whatever. And when they put it out into the world, a lot of them say, I don't own it anymore. You know, it's whatever people make of it, and then people kind of take it and go with it. We see that as it happens with memes. Memes get churned back in and then you know, brought back up again, with new layers added to it, and then added to a whole pastiche, and then it becomes a thing, it becomes a running gag, and the original guy came up with the meme would have never seen it going in that direction. But with Allo Allo, what I'm going to say is, you get a sense that some of the people behind the scenes, producers, directors, whatever, they might even, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, they might not have known, but what it tends to do is, you can say that everybody's laughing at all the jokes in these half an hour episodes, but it makes light of World War II, and it makes a lot of us in the color age think, oh yeah, all of that is done and dusted. We can laugh at it all. There's nothing more. Like, we're so far from any event that happened then. that none of us can affect it. None of it can affect us. We're so far from it that we can just look at this as though it's just amusing. And yet, we know there are people who still are extremely upset about what they believe happened. And again, like there's no way that you can inhabit somebody's mind and know what it means to them to even believe anything, or that they have any clear delineation in their minds between what they see on TV as a obviously set in some kind of fictional reality, but is a fictional reality. And whether somebody might look at this comedy series and go, no, that is an accurate representation of what happened. And that literal thing happened. And there was another, I'll just mention this before moving on. There was another TV series, which you might have seen then as well. I mean, I sometimes forget. Like, of course, people in the Netherlands picked up the BBC, and maybe people in Scandinavia did also. So you might have gotten all the BBC stuff. But there was another BBC TV series, and it was called Blackadder. And the fourth series of that was called Blackadder Goes Forth. It's also set in different histories, and that was World War One, which was the most recent history that they did. And it covered World War One, and it was both a comedy and a tragedy. So it was a tragicomedy, and it did both wonderfully. And more than anything, I would say it educated people on World War One and the horror of it, because of what's most horrific is how cavalier, I think is the right word. Like, although where exactly that comes from, I guess it might be from people on horseback just I don't know, being so reckless with how they treated other people walking along in the battlefield, and they would just mow people over. I'm only guessing. I don't know whether that comes from. But there was one particular character who I believe was based on Lord Kitchener. The character's name was Lord Melchett, and he was played by Stephen Fry. And it was a very good casting, because Stephen Fry is a known lover of men, I'll say that. And he has a husband who's much younger than him. And I say that in the parlance that is used, but however. And also Lord Kitchener, it's been a long time since I've read about him. I think his name was Horatio. I forget what he had. I don't know whether he used his two names, but like military men. He is the guy, Lord Kitchener, anyway, as he was called. He's the guy who's famous for the Boer War, or the two Boer Wars in South Africa, and being very cavalier there with people's lives too. But Lily, I'll spend a little bit of time on this, because Lily says that she's there, and I'll read out one of her messages there from one of her videos. She did a video on World War One there recently, maybe two videos recently, I can say. And what was so horrific about it was how blasé, I'll use that word as well, right? How nonchalant somebody like Lord Kitchener was with throwing just battalions of men. I don't know what the exact right word should be. Tens and tens of thousands of men just at strafing machine gun fire. Just off you go now, lads. They'll soon run out of bullets. Okay, next line, lads. Off you go. The Jerrys will soon run out of bullets. We'll have them now soon. And like, that was literally their war tactics. Like, when you've heard of a war of attrition, that's what they believed they were fighting. I mean, at least the British, with their own men, the English, with English men, Welsh men, and Scottish and Irish men, and anybody else they could throw in there. Of course, like when they teamed up with the French, they were saying, "Oh, right, good, give us some of your men there. We'll throw some French men onto the pile there as well." And it was horrific. And like, I remember reading about a lot of these things, and as I say, this guy anyway, Lord Kitchener, he's the guy who, very much like Uncle Sam, exactly carbon copy. He is the guy who famously is that poster, where he's pointing out from the poster saying, "Your country needs you," or maybe it was like, "King and country needs you," and but needs you for what exactly? I mean, now I think I've heard a lot of talk about how Generation Z and Generation Alpha are saying, "Listen, I won't be fighting your wars for you. Put me in prison if you like. I've heard you got PlayStations in there. I'm not going to war though," and they might have a problem that way. and that feeds into big reason then why they might think, whether they be right or not remains to be seen, that a lot of new citizens will be given their citizenship formally when they do their tour of duty and come back, if they do, wherever they might be sent. And maybe some of the new people in that military industrial complex, I mean, they'll really be a citizen of a corporation. Of course, we all know that now. But maybe some of them will understand what they're signing up for and might say, "Yeah, yeah, no, I'll sign that contract. Like, I accept your offer and I take it." But maybe others will sort of say, like, "Nah, man, I'm going home." I'm not. Why would I do that? So they are going to have what you could describe as a morale problem. But this fella, as I say, like, it used to be as simple as your country needs you, and then in England at the time, or Britain, they'd say, "Oh, Blighty needs us," Lady Godiva or Britannia needs us, and we must get ahead of the bow and smooth the waves for um, Lady, our sort of, what is it called? Is it a talisman? Not exactly that, but anyway, the lady at our bow, the bow of our ship, and rule Britannia and all this. So I mean, look, I'll say this while I'm saying it, right? Because I know I've spoken to a lot of Americans over the years and online. Obviously, particularly people from the United States, that even now, even guys who've come back from, I remember talking to a fella, and you never know, he might be listening now. You just never know. And he used to talk about how he went on holidays by mistake, or he went on this silly holiday over to the Gulf, and it was the worst mistake he might have made, going on that what he thought would be a bit of a holiday in a sandy desert area. But I'm not saying he'd feel like this, but a lot of guys who would even come back from something like that, and they would say, "What did I do?" Like they know that they were used, and then of course when they come back, most typically America learned this after the Vietnam War, and guys coming back, the country didn't want to know them, the government didn't want to look after them. They were told they were fighting the scourge of the red advance wherever it might be in the world, and they came back, and their neighbors, their friends, nobody wanted them, and they were not looked after by the government and not looked after by the citizens. So they went like, why did I do anything then? And it's always too late. Every generation never finds out, never understands until it's too late, and they don't pass on these messages. But even if they, of course, if they would try, many wouldn't understand. I'll park that for a second and just kind of come back and say that I'll finish the thought again. I know that a lot of Americans, even those kind of people, if you would say to them, I mean, what is America anymore anyway? I mean, what are you fighting for? Like, I mean, certainly if somebody from Europe, or certainly if somebody from the place that we don't like to mention too much, we'll say in the sort of Middle East, but anyway, if somebody from there certainly would say, well, you don't even have a country anymore. Who do you think you're fighting for? People do get, they have, I'm not going to say, the word triggered, but they do have a reflex reaction to that. And, lots of Americans would say to Europeans, what do you know? What do you know? You don't even have this and you don't even have that. You never had freedom. But none of us have freedom now. Whenever it left our countries, I'm sorry to say, it left long before. There might be some exceptions, but really any of us were born. We didn't realize we were born into, like, Alex Jones says, but he doesn't have a monopoly on it. We were born into a prison planet. We just didn't see the bars. We didn't understand the constraints that were on us. I'll say one last thought, just to give you a different aesthetic for that before just checking the comments again. And I'll come back to World War One, and I'll come back to remind me, Lily, if I don't get back to it, to talk more about World War One. But Lord Kitchener, to finish that point anyway, he like when it was put to him that, like, what kind of tactics are these? You don't seem to be doing anything that's gonna win. Like, we're not gonna have a country left, or like we're gonna have a landmass, but we're not gonna have anybody living in it because you'll have sent them all off to die in a trench somewhere. And he said, well, he says, one cannot always wage war the way one wants. And it was that such a callous disregard for these lives. He treated them as though they were lead soldiers that he could melt down and just make more of any time he liked. And I say that to you because, like, that is, syncretion or syncretism. They really did do in those mud trenches a form of dissolving and then coagulating. And if you think of blood coagulating and blood and soil coagulating, I mean, you really begin to see whether these guys understand distinctly in the front of their minds at all or not. And if not, then there is something that's moving around like a spirit that he understands very well. And it's the collective disregard for the sanctity of human life that he gets such a kick out of. And he uses men, whether they think they're clever or don't think very much at all, he uses them all to basically defile the sanctity of God's creations. And the song Radiohead song, I think it might be Creep, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's out of OK Computer. But you know that line, you do it to yourselves, you do, or you do it to yourself, you do. And that's what really hurts. And like always these thoughts, like from modern or old, and when they all marry up like that, like whether it's, when I say modern, I'm thinking of like late 90s, early 2000s, and, not so modern. Beginning of the 20th century, 14 to 18, or around that time anyway. When you see thus it ever was and thus it ever has been, um, I'm going to speak for myself. There has been many times that I've just read something that seems at first to be a little bit of no consequence. And then I relate it to another thought that seems to be just, well, a sort of like a surface level thing and of no particular consequence either. I have sometimes thrown my head back, and I'm not trying to say I weep for humanity, but something along those lines. And but I try not to let it go for too long into feeling anguish or sorry for myself, because I really haven't had to deal with much hardship at all. But I see how I'll say this, like when I was in school, and maybe you had received the same task as well, for English or history. They would say, write an essay on, and one of the choices was always man's inhumanity to man. It's such an abstract topic, just sounds so intangible and abstract. Man's inhumanity to man. Da, 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 and you're trying to fill 3 pages or something. Now, I'm not saying that I was that careless or unfeeling back when I was, a teenager or whatever. But things resonate with me now much more so than they did then. Or sometimes I try to think back to what did I really feel and think about things. Like I wasn't superficial, I wasn't surface level, but I was more wrapped up in who I was and where I was going that weekend, or what I was doing, or the things that affect a teenager or preoccupy a teenager's mind. So I wasn't thinking too much about black and white men and black and white days, but I do now, because as I said at the outset, all of a sudden, well, it's a bit like hyperinflation. For a long, long time, just gradually creeps up on you, and then all of a sudden, you realize, oh no, we've got hyperinflation. So I just gradually got older, and then all of a sudden, I went, oh no, now I'm old. And people might have been able to tell me about certain things, but I wouldn't have really understood. I think, always know things, you have information, but you then only realize the simplest of things much, much later, when you kind of go, I think I always knew that. How come I didn't realize that? And unfortunately, life is the teacher. Like, you can't really be told, you have to experience it. And so, like, for many things, I've had to come to these conclusions. They're simple, really, but I mean, it's as complicated as taking a few decades to learn it. That if this was purgatory, or if this was a training ground for the next iteration of life, in whatever form it takes, it would have to be this way. Nobody could just give you a guidebook and say, just read that and you'll be up to speed. I mean, I kind of would have liked it, but it might not have made any much difference ultimately. But before I take another break, I want to get this out before I move on, because it's something that I meant to make a video on, but felt that I couldn't because I didn't have the idea fully formulated, like many. And going live is something that forces me to try and at least make the best of the idea that I can, see if I can make it presentable. It's a bit like, I mean, you might have lots of thoughts flying around in your head, but as soon as you say it to somebody out in public on the street, all of a sudden it doesn't seem so solid of an idea, and you think, "Oh, I'll keep it to myself for another little while." But going live, it forces you to see whether essentially it passes the sniff test, as it's about to come out. And I've also, like, the reason I can feel a bit more confident in doing this is that these ideas have been in my head for many years. They're just sort of nebulous, but I want to make them more concrete now. And here's one of them anyway. And like, I don't care really. You know, people say that, but I really don't care at this stage. I'm several years past loving my life, you know, and that really helps you stop worrying so much about what people say or might think about your ideas. But here's this anyway. It's an image more than an idea. And that's when it went clang in my head. And I was looking at Egyptian iconography and symbolism. And one of the most famous things is the symbol called the Ankh, A-N-K or A-N-K-H, I think. And you know, it was at the time when I was looking at it that I was wanting to treat it as both a letter and a symbol and twist it around and make it into a 3D thing and maybe hollow it out and see if you could fit things in it, make use of it as a mold. And it's that word mold, right? That really, when I saw the picture of it, then I went, oh my God. Because I was thinking of it as a letter or a symbol or as a key. Like it's sometimes it's called the key to life. If somebody is given these Ankh in their tomb, maybe it's because they're given the keys to go into the afterlife, or maybe it's the keys to could be the keys to, I know I'm mixing up Greek and Egyptian, but it could be the keys to Hades. But also it could be there was this wasn't it Anubis? I think it was Anubis, the guy who looked like a dog, and he carried these keys. But however, let's not get bogged down in that. I was thinking of them as small, something you hold in your hand, or at the very largest, or as a letter, or as, you know, maybe something that's a little bit simple, sorry, similar to the Celtic cross, something like that. And you see it coming into the Catholic Church as well. So I just thought, all right, yeah, yeah, it's sort of like that. I was thinking along the Zeitgeisty thing, that movie where you have a lot of the same religious iconography. However, one of the pictures, when I was looking for different pictures of the Ankh, and I was thinking, could it be it's a key to life to set you free from the bracelets? Because I was thinking of religion, religio, like religio is I bind or I am bound, maybe. And so I was thinking of a slave ship. They've got the shackles on your legs, maybe on your arms too. And these keys then are given to you, and you can go free now, and you can unlock your shackles. But that's all I was thinking. I was thinking of that scale. Then I scaled it up. Sorry, I didn't. I saw a picture where it was scaled up, and it was a mold. And then I went, oh my God, how did I not see this? So it was the size of a man. Or, I mean, it was larger than a baby anyway, but so it was the shape of a man. And if you, I think I was looking at words like anthro or andromorph, you know, the shape of a man at the time. And, you know, to morph means to shape, but it also means, like, say, you know, you could get clay and morph it or move it, or shape it like putty. And then, you know, like man, it says in the Bible, like, you know, God picks him up out of clay and he shapes him and then he sets him just like he'd put him into a kiln, and then he takes shape. But if you're going to sort of have a template for that, then wouldn't you go looking for something that's made out of metal and you fill it with clay and then you fire it in the kiln and then you bring it out and you have another Adam, and then maybe you just tailor it. You say, right, I'll just twist the genes on this one. And I saw a picture of Egyptians, and they were they were twisting the double helix DNA, and I went, oh my God. And I just kind of thought of a lab thousands of years ago. But also outside this pyramid, out in the sand, was this large mold, and it was in the shape of the Ankh. And so at the top of the Ankh, it was the head, and then you had the arms sort of by the side or stretched out. And then I suppose like it widens a bit, like maybe for the key, but the legs can just widen out, and you have the feet and the legs there. And that's the shape of a man. So the Ankh, the keys to life, is that it provides the template, the basic outline at the very least anyway, for the shape of the man. And to me, that just seemed so significant that here we are, And maybe you might like to think, look, I don't know, I'm not trying to push any ideas like this on you. Some people really don't like this idea. But if there is reincarnation, we'd like to get outside of the bounds that they set for us, and they're waiting for us the next time we, you know, disembark, and we're birthed, and we then get shaped into the template that they have waiting for us, all the preconceptions they like to fill our heads with, and then send to school to line up in formation with all the other children, rank and file, wearing the same clothes as a uniform. We are uniformed that way, or so they'd like, even though each of us should be a unique variation of the image of God. Right, I'll climb down now off that pulpit there, but I just kind of wanted to get that out there because it's just these ideas, if they're in my head. I believe it was, God, I've forgotten his name now, but it was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Robert M. Persig, I think is how he said his name. He talked about, I think the word was an Indian sort of word, or maybe it was, I can't remember which tribe, a Choctaw. Maybe it's just a made up word, but it's an idea. He said, once you have an idea of something that's in your head, like a Choctaw, he says it's very difficult not to inflict it on others. And you might empathize with what I'm saying. When you have this idea that's been in your head for a long, long time, you feel like, in case I go, I just want to pass it on to others, so they can just do whatever they like or nothing with it, but I just want to get it out there. Right. I'll take a break now to address some of your very kind comments, I'm assuming. Right. So we'll come back to World War One and Two. Vingul says, I pointed out that The Wizard of Oz was on TV because it wasn't like my grandfather actively showed it to me. And I think we just saw the beginning. Okay. The Yellow Brick Road, says Matt, was the gold standard, absolutely. And Dorothy's ruby red slippers were originally silver in the book. Yes, so the silver standard. And the Emerald City represents the Fed or the dollar, maybe the color green. I remember there was a song, "What's the color of money? What's the color of money?" And his refrain was, "They tell me that they know it's green, or they tell me that they think it's green, but me, I know it's red." Because it's it always relies on the shedding of blood from others for it. Sorry, anyway, Oz stands for ounce, the ounce symbol, and so on. Yes, I think you're right about that there as well, the OZ. And Matt says, the man behind the curtain pulling the levers at the Fed. Yep. And oh yeah, well there I am. I was kind of not doing it in the right order there. From Wind War, hello, Wind War. Right. And Lily says she's listening to models talk, so that's the set. And she says, I feel genius level. Didn't they used to tell us that there was a few models that were genius and had high IQs? They were just blessed in every direction. One of them might have been Christy Turlington, I seem to remember. But there was a model that was in Kill Bill, and she was a favorite of Quentin Tarantino's. I just temporarily forget the name, but you know who I'm talking about. And she was in, of course, not just Kill Bill, but she was in Pulp Fiction. But anyhow, she was supposed to be somebody who not only was a genius, but had a science degree or maybe something else. Anyhow, don't give, I would say, like, do whatever you like, of course, but don't give too much detail on whatever personal stuff might be. Just don't make it easy for them. That's all. But of course, everyone's free to do what they want. Lily says a lot of doctors on that plane that crashed in Brazil on the way to the conference. Ah, okay. And by Jamie's Hill Rubis says, on the fly, good to listen. On the fly, maybe so. Maybe he's in the air. I don't know. Vingul says, Allo, Allo. So that was the TV series from World War II. The comedy TV series was on TV in the late 90s, early 2000s as well here in Norway, roughly the same time. All right, so listen, I forgot as well that, of course, other European TV stations were perfectly free and did buy content from the BBC. He says, it really was quite fair. It didn't make the Germans look like monsters or anything. They were all comedic characters, yeah. All were quite sympathetic characters, but all were lampooned as well, which people just can't tolerate anymore. Jamie says, garrulous and inquisitive are my issues. Who's listening? Ah, sure, BBC programming. Okay. I should just read at least half these before I put them on screen. Jamie's Hill Rubis again says, I remember TV, Doctor Who, been going back and listening to the old ones from the 60s when I was a child. Hi Sunshine, liked your piece on the fast food. Sorry, I shouldn't read out stuff that's between somebody from just between people in the chat. And sure, cognitive dissonance. What else? Old tricks are the best. Say no more. Know what I mean? Right. Lily says, I'm trying to pass it on. I don't know what that is referring to. I should pause and look down, but sometimes when I'm in the middle of talking about something, I don't look anywhere, but just sort of slightly up and away from the screen. Lily, oh yeah, Vinkel didn't know that Lily Kazoo made videos, so there you are. Excellent. And this is Reg up in Alaska, and he says, if we are so free, why do we have to pay? Rhetorical question there, but it sounds like the intro to a musical number. He says, or Jamie Hill Rubis says, I must realize that when it comes to the crunch point, it'll happen all at once. And like the Great Depression, we'll find all precisely where they need to be on the moment, necessary from love. Yeah, look, I heard myself the other day saying something like, well, in fact, saying exactly like, God maybe will put us where we need to be, either to be of use to somebody else or to learn something ourselves or something like that. And I realized it was the kind of thing like my parents or grandparents might have said. And they used to warn me, one day you'll hear the phrases that you laugh at us for saying coming out of your own mouth. And I was saying, never, never. But anyway, you know, the lesson was you'll turn into your parents one day. I said, absolutely not. You guys are uncool, right? I'm cool. Right? And then I got old and not with it anymore and started wearing onions hanging off my belt. This is what, says Jamie Hill Rubis, this is what your life in illusion must experience and endure. Meher Baba, God speaks. Check it out. Sounds, look, that name rings a bell. It sounds very like one of those Indian style gurus that I sometimes watch. Jiddu Krishnamurti, no doubt you're familiar with him. He's not a current guy, by the way. Sláinte, Papyrus of Annie. He says, Evie on Peak Prosperity Channel did a live recently about the grief of all this. Okay. I started feeling that there, for me anyway, I come in and out of them. I started feeling that he and her were both getting a bit same thing on repeat, and I just got a bit tired of it. But I'll go back and have a look, and I actually appreciate something of that, because when we all understand that we're going through grief, and I have been going through a kind of not, yeah, I wanted to add on anxiety or grief, or and definitely like the kind of emotions that you go through at a funeral, but a prolonged one, and one that never ends, because there is no, as far as I considered, and still don't know that there ever will be, but I'm sort of trying to decide that I'm going to continue to use whatever the rest of my life is for some productive purpose, because I'll get onto it in a minute, but I just don't want to be constantly wallowing in self-pity, because I have admonished others for doing that in the past. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. It kind of amounts to that. Also don't want to find out that there is some kind of afterlife and that there is a creator, and he'd be like, what were you doing? You know, I mean, you didn't get in the game at all. You know, I'll be like, all right, well, sorry, can I have another chance? And he'd be like, well, I mean, I don't know, why should I put you in again? You know, like, put me in, coach. You know, you kind of, I think I get a sense you have to sort of at least go for the ball, you know, every once in a while. But so part of, anyway, the grief is, if you understand you're not the only one suffering a sense of loss, of profound loss, then you don't, you can look at it two ways. You don't go, great, let's get together for a pity party. You might say, oh, okay, so I'm not suffering alone. Right. There's a lot of others like me. So therefore, there's a human race that's worth fighting for. That's kind of how the the calculation goes, I suppose. That's not it's not exactly a calculation. I don't like applying mechanical language to an emotional thing. But anyway, um, right. So you like the idea. I'm too far behind to know what it was exactly, but it could be that it was the Ankh. Um, another, says Vingol, another lady with a science degree and a model good looks. Angela Merkel, really? Right, right, okay. So she's also blessed. I always thought she was just like, a sort of a token. Basically, the way if you really wanted to pick a really good looking German lady, that's who you'd pick, Angela Merkel. And so I thought that that's the only reason she got promoted into the high office. I hadn't realized that she had all the brains to burn as well. That's fascinating. Lily says, I've read a number of accounts of reincarnation, some very well documented. It makes sense. No wisdom wasted. Okay. I just like to consider everything. Everything should be on the table for consideration, and we should never mock anybody, especially when we're saying, uh, and I won't even name some of the ones that people mock because people get bogged down in it. But I hear people who should know a lot better because they got to where they are by not poo-pooing any ideas, by not allowing themselves to be mocked or ridiculed for considering out there conspiracy theories, right? Especially the hateful and bigoted ones. They went, no, I don't care, or let me examine it anyway. Or the more you tell me that I'm those things, I'm going to examine it. Well, the more you tell somebody that that's outlandish, stupid, crackpot, all this sort of stuff, schizo, spurgy. I mean, these same people, they don't even hear themselves when they're talking. And they go into places and they say, oh, I was talking to this guy and he thought this. And I was like, oh man, I'm out of here. You're whacked. And I'm like, how can you in good conscience do that? And I know that you've never looked into it, because if you had, you would know that actually that thing you've just tried to dismiss out of hand is now pretty much mainstreamed. Like to the point where like the BBC and CNN even are saying, oh yeah, oh, we do that, But anyway, sorry, I think I skipped. Ooh, no, oh yeah. So here, Reg says, you got me. That was in a musical bit or two I made lately. Did you hear I won 500 for one of my songs? I did. He says in brackets, brag, brag. And I heard it from the horse's mouth. And I'm sorry if I didn't leave a message. If I didn't, I don't know why I didn't. Oh, do you know? I think that I did, but maybe I didn't. Do you know what happened? I liked the video, and the like went away. But then I came back about 5 minutes later, because that happens sometimes, right? To check, and it was then the like had filled in for me. So I went, okay, fair enough. Maybe it was a glitch in my internet. I'll leave it alone for now. And what often happens to me is I can't leave a message, because if I try and leave a message, then look, it could be my phone, but the keyboard will just, it'll freeze. And then I have to do a few tricks on my phone to get it to work again. So I might have just given up in frustration, but congratulations to you. And look, can I do a bit of bragging as well, right? It's a small brag, right? And I don't want to do this often. It's a small thing. I'll tell you anyway, right? So I've recently joined X, and if you're listening now, however many of you are, whether you agree with anything I say or not, or whether you think I'm all right and think I'm a likable fellow, or really don't like me at all, what I would invite you to do, and I've already put a community post about it. You can find the link in my recent community post. I've made a basket. I was going to say, how can I word this? I've made a safe space for a basket case of deplorables, something like that. I was trying to think of something funny way to put it. Over on X, and it'll be my first one, and I'll be struggling a little bit with the technicalities of it. But if you can bear with me, it's the kind of place where we can talk. Oh, you would not believe how freely we can talk. And you can say anything. Any word you like, you can say it. But some of the words you might say might bring in our constant companions. But be prepared for that. I'm unapologetic. I will say anything to anyone. And the only reason I try not to say certain things on this platform is because you know what happens. Like it just gets yanked, and so that's all. Um, I'm what I the reason I would say anything because I think that it's possible to talk to anyone, and I also think that if they choose to come in and listen or even try to interrupt, I'll tolerate any questions, any conversation from them if they are responsive and they're not just trying to be disruptive. Um, and basically, you know the way, right? As far as it goes, as far as I can be. So I invite you all to come over and you can listen. But I would really appreciate if you would maybe consider throwing in your 2 cents and having your say as well. So I've been using X and so that'll be tomorrow, and that will be at I think I said 8 a.m. Pacific time, and I would then make it 9 Mountain, 10 Central, and 11 Eastern time, and that means then 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, I'll call it, and then 5 p.m. Central Europe, and then it's going to be late if there's anybody in Australia or that side. Like it's going to be, I think, between the west coast of Australia, it'll be like 11 p.m. I think, and then it'll be probably something like 1 a.m. I'm not sure if it'll even be, might be later than that. On the east side of Australia. But anyhow, I mean, you never know. Somebody might be up late on a Saturday, and if anyone wants to come in and talk, it would be excellent if you would want to join me. And I'll set a topic. I have a topic, a base topic, but like whatever way the conversation goes, we can deal with it. But what I want to say anyway to you, my little brag, is that there are some, of course, as you might know, some people who are popular. They got a lot of, as they're called, followers over there, even though there is a thing called subscribers as well. And like there are some celebrities. Sometimes like they are hot right now, sometimes not so hot right now. But there are some kind of celebrities of varying sizes. But one of the things that I want to brag about is, no, sorry, the only thing, but I won't tell you who it is because I don't want to sort of dox the person, right? Or dox me. Actually, maybe that's it. I'm not trying to protect that person. I'm more trying to protect me. Because I noticed something today. So you know the way sometimes people are real famous and they're not following. We'll say famous for the sake of a better word, for lack of a better word. Sometimes the people who are big channels, like they have loads of people who are following them, but they don't follow anyone, or maybe they follow one person. And what I saw was that I was mutual with this person, right? So this person follows me, right? I follow that person, but that person only follows one person. It's me, and I was like, wow, that senpai noticed me, and that was somebody who is big enough to go on, like all the alt right channels, the alternative, um, conservative type stuff, and have interviews and stuff like that. So I was like, wow, I sort of I'm touching the cloth of a famous person, that sort of way. So that's me, brag. That's my little sort of I suppose little thrill for the day. Anyway, for me, I kind of went, okay, don't mention this. It's only going to sound really silly, but now I just did, right? So look, I'll get on with the show a little bit because there was maybe a couple of other things that I might have wanted to say, but there's a few more. He's talking about Mason Finkel. He's talking about me. I just put that on screen there. He's talking about me. I know you're joking. I know you're joking, but Vingo has a few followers, all right, and there could be a lot of normies there as well. You just never know because a lot of normies might just appreciate some rousing music. You just never know, and some of the wonderful things that he puts on his channel there. That don't necessarily like a lot of it seems all very completely. Why would anybody object to any of it? And then you kind of go, listen. As we've seen, they'll object to anything if they think it might bolster our spirits. So Lily's having a laugh at that as well, and yeah. So Matt's saying that's awesome. Oh, well, cheers, Matt. I got a little bit of a thrill out of it. Anyway, there was a few of the comments there I might have skipped over, so I'll just have a quick read of those and then get back to you. Or get back to regularly scheduled broadcast programming. Oh God, I'm not sure if I can. Sometimes this, it's not. Let me scroll back a bit. Just check. Okay, no, I'm able to scroll back now. Okay. to hear. Okay, so Vingol says, "Lol, I think she has a PhD in physics." Merkel. Okay. Um, she's looking well for her age, though. My God, she's still a handsome woman, as they used to say. Handsome woman. Anyway, Matt says, "That's freaking awesome, Reg. By the way, I had an idea for a song, but I forgot it. Lol. I'll come back eventually and I'll send it." Okay. And Reg says, "Well, I know you're only talking between each other, but Reg says, for sure, I still have a few credits to use by the end of the day." And oh yeah, so I kind of forget that like oftentimes Matt might be working as well. He says, "I just got done changing out a faucet. I'm taking a smoke and getting ready to clock out and leave. Plantation for the weekend." Well done to you, Matt. You do honest work and vital uh, work that everybody needs. Hasn't changed since the Roman times. Like, what have the Romans ever done for us? Well, they gave us running water. Yeah, okay, but apart from that, you know. Stephen says, Stephen Crumley, he says, "Those who call us crackpots are those folks, or these folks, who have no internal monologue and admit it publicly." As if that's not insane. Yeah. By the way, like I was describing recently, like, because I've gone on a few, I think they're just called spaces, but maybe some people call them live spaces on X. And I've contributed to, like some channels that are, or how do you call it? I might be using the wrong terminology there. I'll just say spaces again. I've contributed to the discussion in some spaces. And what am I trying to say here? Jeez, it's the thought. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my thought now. Sorry, this happens sometimes, right? Oh yeah, I was in one of these anyway. I was talking to some people and telling them about describing to them like my own thought process about how I learned how to drink sensibly, or trained myself how to drink sensibly, or trained myself how not to be addicted to cigarettes, or that kind of a thing, right? And I basically described how I split my internal monologue up into basically a dialogue where I'd say, "Now, John, you're about to light up a cigarette. Do you want to just run an experiment on yourself? I mean, you're really, as I would often say, gutting for a cigarette, like you're hurting for one. You know, you're jonesing for a fix of your nicotine, right?" So I would say to myself, "John, I mean, listen, you can have one, right? But like, would it be all right if you just waited like, could you wait like 5 minutes? Is that too much to ask?" Or and then I might say, "Well, listen, I mean, other John, I mean, I hear you. You're asking me nicely, but I don't know what's in it for me." And you go, "Well, look, I just nothing really. It's just I'm going to be honest with you. I just want to see if we can do it. I mean, because you can have one. I'm not going to prevent you having one. You can have one. But if you just wouldn't mind just seeing what's going to happen, I'm curious, aren't you, to see what might happen if you don't have one right now. Just stick around with me here for 5 minutes and see what happens. Maybe nothing bad's going to happen. But I mean, listen, if something bad starts happening, light up a cigarette. Oh, no problem." And I go, "Okay, that sounds reasonable. Thanks, other John." And I'd say to them, like, "I realize that sounds completely schizo. Well, maybe you can't use that method." Well, that's what I did. And I sort of acted as though I was keeping myself company, guarding myself, and also saying to myself, "Listen, if you try and trick yourself into cheating on this, you're only fooling yourself," as your mother used to say. And she's not here now to sort of, scold you or chide you for basically only, as I say, fooling yourself. So just you're on an honor system now. Nobody's watching you but me. And I go, but I am you. And you go, "I know," etc., etc. Right? So it sounds schizo, but does that count as an inner monologue? And I think maybe what it might be is that a lot of people would go, "Oh, yeah, no, I do that, but like I thought if I said to anyone that I do that, they would cart me off to a mental asylum." You know what I mean? And because when I was a kid in school, of course, right? You were terrified about like doing anything out of the ordinary, anything a bit unusual or odd, in case you were singled out as being, too far out of step with others, and then maybe you'd never live it down. Something stupid or so unusual that other people might recognize it in themselves, but they wouldn't want to admit it. So they'd quickly gang up on you and, never let you live it down. And you'd get some nickname that was very embarrassing. So it could be a lot worse these days, where kids just sort of say, "I hear nothing in my head. I just do what I'm told," and that's that, because they're terrified about being the equivalent of being cancelled in school, like cancelled from society, ostracized, that kind of way. So it could be. I mean, I've thought about the whole. Um, I think we talked about this before, the NPC or the organic portal or that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it seems as if some people live their lives like that, but I would say that they are willfully suppressing their own light behind their eyes because they've been extra trained how to do that from birth. And of course, can't really discuss it here, but there are more and more things that they um, sort of I can think I can use the word pathologize. So, what should be normal human traits or characteristics? They go, oh, that's an ism or an ist. We'd better send him somewhere to get diagnosed with a label that we can stick on him, and then we can apply some kind of procedure or remedy to that thing, which should be just counted as normal human behavior. Anyway, look, sorry for getting distracted, but I think also that is the flavor of the kind of conversations that I can have much more freely with people on X. And I think those things are helpful going forward into the future. So anyway, Reg says, about the leaving a comment. He says, thanks, man. I have to use my phone to comment and I can't even see the chat on YouTube. All right. Okay. And I'll get on to Lily's comment as well now, right? About World War One. Stephen Crumley says, imagine not having an internal monologue. It's unfathomable because my brain never stops. Yes. And sometimes we wish we could turn it off. It never rains, but it pours, eh? So I think a healthy balance and finding a way to balance that, it's all part of getting older and getting more comfortable in your skin and figuring ways to live your humanity, and it's all a learning process. Nobody should be prevented from practicing how to do that. It's a lifelong. I often liken it to finding your balance on a unicycle, or taking your training wheels off a bicycle, or being on a roller skates or skateboard, or maybe best is probably trying to be on a surfboard, maintain your balance and ride the wave, and then not get too confident and fall off. Old man Matt rather says, I've been meaning to join up over an X. I will do it this evening. Good man. Hope to see you there tomorrow. Yeah, Stephen, he says, you didn't get your brains washed out with psychotropics. I hope not. Okay, I'm just moving on a little bit now. I think this is where then I left off. Stephen says, I dox myself. These cowards can't and won't do anything in real life. Listen, you're probably right. What I decided was I'm not going to make it easy for them, let them waste their energies. Lily says, my brag is that you comment on my videos. You talking to me? I don't want to assume that. I don't know, right? But really? Stephen says, I'm on my way home from work too, and we got our new high definition plasma table in about 2 p.m. today. 300 amp, thing is a beast. Yeah, I've never used one of those, but a table. I'm not even sure that I can say that I know. I think I've seen a plasma furnace or a fireplace rather. But I never really saw it in use or something like that. So yeah, I'm interested to learn about it. By the way, like it depends on how long you want to stick around. I could get on to some technological stuff. We'll see how it goes. What I tried to do was have some baseline things to talk about, and then also just see where this goes, right? And see where my thoughts might form as I'm going. Stephen says, I'm 15 months into quitting smoking. I'm quite proud of myself. Excellent. We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow, if you like. Tom Twain says, I like being addicted to tobacco. And that's all right too. If you like, Vinigal says, it's like the angel versus the devil on one shoulders in old cartoons. It's not crazy. That's, about the splitting your mind into the dialogue. Yeah. And look, all actors have to do that anyway, don't they? But of course, maybe they lose their mind after a while, or lose the sense of self because they've spent so long pretending to be other people. Vingol says, I used to talk to myself like a crazy person until I was about 8. Apparently, that's very normal. At that age, the voice in quotes, becomes internalized, except for those who lack an internal monologue. Well, I'm not certain that I ever vocalized what I used to say, but maybe, actually, probably. I mean, because look, as kids, a part of play is that we talk to the toys, zoom, zoom with the cars, that sort of stuff. The toy cars, I mean. Lily says, oh, sorry, did I read all that? No, I did. Okay. Except for those who lack an internal monologue. Lily says, tobacco. Put it on screen here. Tobacco is rough to quit. Never could afford them when young, so I never got captured. Coffee is my addiction. A lot of people I hear now say coffee is an addiction. And if it is, or if it is a drug, I do not consider it to be as bad in any way as, say something like cigarettes. But a lot of Americans I've met seem to, I don't know if they're sort of over egging it a bit, exaggerating for effect. But a lot of them seem serious when they sort of talk about like that their chronic, crippling addiction to coffee. And I'm like, all right, like steady on. You'd swear you're on some kind of like, crack cocaine or something like that, But although I have heard some, I'll just say this because it's not too long. Somebody said, well, even the good quality or the vacuum packed. I didn't exactly say this, but I was wondering if it applied to this. But it did occur to me that pre-ground coffee that I used to drink out of a vacuum pack, well, it did always occur to me, like, I mean, I'm taking their word for it that they've put nothing but pure ground coffee beans into it, but you never know. But so I guess what they were saying is that what they were saying, actually, by the way, was that, oh, it's already moldy, it's already rancid, and so when you're drinking it, you're just putting moldy, rancid stuff into your gut or into your intestine. And I was saying, okay, well, that doesn't sound good then. I mean, like, if there's a bad aspect to drinking real coffee, then that does not sound good. Now, they didn't specify, but I presume then that the way around that is to buy your own beans from somewhere where you know it's coming from, or you trust wherever it's coming from, and you grind them yourself. I guess that's how it goes. But anyway, yeah, Stephen says, I'll email you some videos of it cutting when we get it wired up and operational. Sorry, a plasma cutter. I was thinking of a plasma heater, right? Sorry. Gotcha. Yes. Well, as it happens, I don't think I've got the slide prepared, but it's almost as if you've looked at a presentation that I was at. Or maybe we've discussed this before. I've never used a plasma cutter, and so it would be fascinating to see a video of it for sure. Cut 2-inch steel. My God, that's a powerful thing. Vingo says, "Lol, Norway has a higher per capita coffee consumption than the US, and we don't consider it a problem." Yeah, well, you got much bigger problems there, right? And he says second in the world after Finland, right? Did not know. Interesting fact. He says maybe we're in denial. Okay. And modus operandi, good to see you. He says lurking and working. Took a break. Hello, chat and host. Thank you. Good man. Some Romans your way. And whoops. Tom Twain says, he says, I'm a real advocate for the virtues of smoking tobacco. All right. But it sounds like what you might be saying is you're an advocate for tobacco, but that doesn't mean you're an advocate for cigarettes or necessarily, the standard sort of manufactured cigarettes, because I do accept that they do add in extra chemicals and whatnot. A lot of people say, no, get real tobacco or even grow your own. And then you know that it's, well, obviously much more pure, but a lot of people I've heard even say, not only is that not bad for you, it might even have some curious beneficial effects, even restorative effects. You never know. I've heard that theory. I'm trying not to judge the messengers too much. I'm trying not to be too skeptical, certainly not too credible, or what's the word for it? Credulous is what I'm trying to say. But there's some sense to the rationale, at least anyway. So never throw any idea out again is the sort of guiding principle. Now, delighted with all these messages, by the way. I think I'm nearly caught up. Stephen Crumley says, Norway was always on my bucket list, but I doubt that I'll ever realize that list being ticked off. I watched tons of videos from Norway, Sweden, Germany, and Scotland. All I hope is that whenever anybody travels anywhere, that they keep their expectations low and they just might be pleasantly surprised. Vingol says, well, cool. Beautiful countries all. Could add Switzerland and Austria. UK country is top of my list, actually. Been to London 4 times. Doesn't count really, does it? Well, look, it depends on how long ago you were there. If you fly into London now, I don't think you're going to recognize the place. And by the place, I mean the people. So I would advise keep your expectations at rock bottom or below if possible. And keep your head on a swivel. Never allow yourself to go into holiday mode. Never allow yourself to wonder or lose focus or look like you don't know where you're going. I wouldn't advise it, basically. It'll be a very disappointing experience. But however, Moda says, I'm leaning Poland, but that's a dream, alas. Tom says, I would never smoke a branded cigarette. Okay, so I might have guessed what you're on about there. And Vinkel says, I saw Chelsea versus Sheffield Wednesday when I was 4 in 1996. Well, things were okay then, but they're not now. So it's the way it is. But then again, if you're in the stadium like that, like obviously depending on where you are sitting, you actually might be in the safest place. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Lily says smokers did better when sick with that thing. I'm saying that thing, protective effect. Yes. And I heard that theory, and I think that there is merit to it for perhaps several reasons. Of course, we can't get into that here, but we can discuss it pretty much all we like elsewhere. That's why I highly encourage people to get over there now while we can. And Vingel says last time was in 2012. Yes, and I mean, look, it's not a recent thing. Back then, it would have been just only slightly less bad than it is now. Right, I think. Well, one more there. Just come in. Lily, hi, my lady. So Modus. I won't say. I'll say it like he's doing pretend zimbing. All right, good man, my lady. Oh, Tom, don't ask questions like that. Come on, don't ask questions that can't be answered here. Hi, Modus. Okay, that's right. I've caught up. Now, look, what I will say to you is that as far as I can see anyway, there is Lily, come on now. Don't ask questions that we just like, even in the chat, the way it is, right? It knows every combination and permutation of words like that. So I was gonna say we'll go on for a bit more, but I'm not scolding you. It's just no point in even getting into it. Right. So anyway, to the people who are here, what I'll say to you is that first thing I'm going to do is address a comment, a post by Lily there about World War II and some of the books and maybe videos that she sort of recommended. She's very well read, although maybe she's blushing if I would say that. I'm not. What I tend to do is there was so many books that I should have read when I was younger and didn't, because I was lazy, basically lazy. And then only these days now am I catching up on some of the things that I should have. And all I'm doing is dipping in and out of things, getting a general gist of stuff. And look, I think I'm doing okay, because a big problem that I used to have when I was younger, and I say younger actually, when I was only like a couple of years younger, but I still tend to do this. I get bogged down in something and then I get stuck in it. And then days or weeks later, I go, so wait a minute, what was I even looking at this for in the first place anyway? And it was just for some minor little trivial detail to do with some other overarching thing that I was looking at. I was going, well, like, that was ridiculous that I wasted 7 days on that. And fine, it's lovely to know, but it doesn't, like, it's not actually getting me anywhere. So all I'm saying is the opposite side of reading books, which I'm not doing. I'm just kind of going, all right, okay, I kind of understand what this book is about now, and I say I'll come back to it, and then I don't. That's annoying. And so there are whole chapters of a book that I don't know, or I've just read a synopsis of a book, and I kind of go, well, look, at least I know the gist of it, and that's all I'm getting these days because I'm trying to catch up. That sort of way. But Lily has a very broad or depth of knowledge to certain things, although I'm not trying to make her blush. And anyway, I'm going to just read from the comment, if I can call it up here. And sorry if you just sorry for the dead air here. I'm trying to see where to go. Anyway, it's about World War One. Lily did a video there, and it was a sort of a follow-up video. Anyhow, I told you already about how it just shocked me. It really floored me when I read about this fellow, Lord Kitchener's callous disregard for the men. And they had pretty much miscalculated. And I presume, like some people in smoking rooms or whatever, started to worry that they would indeed run out of men before they could send them off all to die in this pool of mud and sanguine substance that comes from people, And so when I said to Lily, like, it really was a war of attrition. They really did just try and throw as many men, troop after troop, at them. Anyway, so she said, like, have you ever read The Great War and Modern Memory? And I don't think I have, and it's just, I thought, well, The Great War. I mean, I can't 100% that I didn't see or read about something to do with the Great War, because that's what they called World War One, of course. Not planning on having a second one after that. But like, I realized as well, then the War of 1870, like, when we talk about the World War One, led directly to World War Two, because it never really ended anyway. There was just a cessation of hostilities for a while until contracts could be signed, and they wanted to see whether people would stay under the thumb or under the yoke. And blame it all on which country. But the War of 1870 led directly to the War of well, maybe there was a bit of a war between it, but anyway, led to World War One, didn't it? And I remember reading about the Belle Epoque, right? Well, I guess this is from a French perspective, but like, I think people used this phrase outside of France at the time. So the good era or period. And also then the fin de la, or is it fin de la siècle or fin de siècle? The end of the century, or the turn of the century. And everybody was so depressed. And it reminded me completely of the end of the 60s. So like, either the turn of the century into 1900, 1901, and I think the poem about the lights go out all over Europe, was that also in the turn of the century, as well as maybe coming back into vogue in 1914. I'm totally only guessing. I just seem to remember it might have been along those lines. And I realized then as well, oh, okay, nothing new under the sun, thus it has ever been. Every generation or every century, people think, we had a lovely society and now it's gone. But I would say with every iteration, it gets worse than any generation could have imagined, like before. Or I'd say it's like ever decreasing circles, or like a spiral that gets closer and closer and tighter, whipped more and more. And then, if you can imagine a whirlpool or a typhoon, sucking the water down, or a black hole squeezing as it rotates, this kind of action anyway, that it compresses more and more and more. And just each time around the circle, around the cycle, if we flatter ourselves, we've had it worse than these generations. But who knows? They thought they had it worse than anybody in history. And so then you get a sense then as well that these periods, or these time frames, or these from this year to this year, where we say that was the War of 1870, let's say, and that was the Great War, and that was World War Two. But we haven't had a war since. Or we had a Cold War, but it was just a standoff. It was a Mexican standoff type thing between Russians and Americans. Or was it just one big, massive psychological operation on all of our citizens? And a lot of these things can be both and neither. and everything and nothing at the same time. And look, while I'm saying that, everything means nothing means anything, and everything means it. Everything, every individual thing means everything. Um, Things are going to get to that stage, and pretty much are. And that's why I guess I thought it was appropriate as well to open up this live stream with the ending of "Live Not by Lies." That phrase, the belled yoke and the lash, like what it means is it's an ox. And the yoke is that harness that you put over its shoulders, over its chest, and then you have the plow attached to it. So you're just a cow, like they say that we are, and we just pull them and do whatever they tell us. And they have a bell on us, a bit like maybe it's more humiliating. And when I guess like it's, I mean, I'm that ignorant, right? But I guess it's so that when he's moving or he gets to associate that noise with whatever he's doing. And the lash, of course, is to um, punish him if he starts getting ideas about why am I doing this anyway, and so on and so on. And so, but it's another metaphor for, oh my God, like they drive us through history, and they condition us, and they give us all these ideas and preconceptions, as I say, that we never go back to examine because they're baked in on the foundation. And then they put brick by brick by brick on top of that and build our civilization on top of these presupposed ideas. And we never even get to sort of say, well, hold on a minute there. Can I just go back and check these foundations? And they go, no, absolutely not. I had the question. But one of the realizations, anyway, as I say, is that they've been doing this for centuries. They've been telling us that they were the ones who were enslaved. And I'm not talking about any particular people. I'm talking about people coming out of Egypt, that sort of way. And but look, I have to draw back a little bit. You understand? Everything is not just topsy turvy. They're literally breaking down not just the meanings of words, redefining everything. I see them now. They're literally making the difference between everything and anything ooze and seep and weep into each other, blend and merge, so that it's almost going to be impossible to make any distinction or to distinguish between anything, one thing and another. Nobody will be able to make any discernment between what is and what isn't, between black and white. It'll all be just an indistinguishable shade of grey, or whatever monotone color you'd like to choose. And that's what I'd sort of like to get talking about more tomorrow, how we can counteract that. And that's, I suppose, why I did title this vaguely enough, The Past, Present, and the Future. Because it is really just to say to you, I'm here, you're there. We might never meet. But I recognize the importance of allowing people to understand that not only are you not alone, but I get the sense that we are reaching a critical mass for several. I have several explanations for that I can't really enumerate here, but I could show you on X and point to certain things. And I could say, I think that I can call this a good sense, something to be confident that I can base. Again, it's a feeling, but it's a surmisation based on a rationale, something that I can see and point to and say, I do think that there is a critical mass of public perception arising now. And like Tucker Carlson, while he is not one of us and never will be, ultimately he's playing his role. That's what he's doing. However, he is bringing us in now to a next stage of the game, whereby they peel back yet another layer or draw yet another curtain, and we think, well, now finally we're going to see this is the last scene now. Not quite, but the layers or the veils get thinner and thinner as we go. But you wouldn't believe how, when they draw back this veil, we think it's the final veil, they'll then still be able to say, but this and that, and is it really this, and how are you sure about that, and everything's still a bit vague. And they'll have other more sort of final immovable rocks, what will seem like rocks that cannot be assailed with truth. And they'll say, no, this is true. I know the other thing turned out not to be true, but that is true. And that's very close to where we're getting. We're getting extremely close now to it going into the mainstream, where a lot of people are going to be asking very obvious questions, so basic that they'll be saying, why did I never ask this question before? Or why did other people not ask it? Or why did I not hear other people asking why we never asked those questions? And the reason for that is because everybody just assumed that all of that was done and dusted, and they didn't need to try and make any sense of it. Therefore, no questions needed to be asked because it was in the black and white days. We've moved on, and there's no sense in raking over old coals. Besides which, we're all moving into the future. We're all going to be rich. Technology will solve all of our problems, and there's no need to worry anymore. We're all friends here now. That's it. We're living in the 21st century, and it's just the same as Star Trek told us it would be. We have Geordie LaForge, and he's got this visor, and he's just so brilliant. We're going to have androids going, oh, I think I understand humans now. I get jokes. I'm the mechanical puppet that came to life. Thank you, Mr. Sung, or whatever, thank you, Mr. Geppetto equivalent. All these characters, you understand, right? Make it so. And all this sort of stuff, right? But then we realized, oh, all of this is just childish distractions. And also we recognize it what it is now. I can't say what it is, actually, right? But they've pulled a fine number on us. And what I'm going to say is that it's going to be much, much more difficult now because of how the economy is going to start really hitting people. It's going to be much, much harder for people to kind of go, no, if you are going off on all these weird theories and questions, I'm not going to tolerate it. I have to go off to my job now, where what I do is I do quality control for, what will they say? I do quality control for an app that tells people what color blouse looks best on their imaginary Barbie doll or something like that. I'm a consultant for that, for which I earn $250,000 every month or something like this, right? Well, people like that are going to, maybe they're going to continue to live in La La Land for quite a while, but more and more, I know I've been wrong and I thought it was going to be imminent, but more and more, it's going to be fewer and fewer people who are going to be able to ignore the realities of what is right now. And it's not just the economy, it's society, it's civilization. Like, I mean, we really are, if you imagine like the Italian Job, right? We're teetering on the edge of that cliff. And, I really do think that we're getting closer and closer. However, I better draw back a little bit and say, Richie from Boston, I'm going to name him now because every month or two, I see an email with a thing that he's put on BitChute or somewhere where he's saying, in the next 2 weeks now, oh yeah, boots on, or another guy who keeps saying boots on the ground next Wednesday or next Friday. I have a good source in the military who says this, right? Those two guys now, I've had enough of them because like Richie from Boston disables his comments. And then occasionally when he forgets, people say, why do you disable your comments? And he goes, oh, it's all these trolls, whatever. It's not. It's people saying, but you said the same thing 2 months ago. And you said the same thing 2 years ago. You said imminently now, next week, this major event is going to happen, right? So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I'm getting the sense that it seems like we're moving into a situation where like big questions are going to start to be asked. And I also get the sense that they know that they could lose this. They could actually lose not just the normies, but people who we thought were our enemies. And a huge amount of them are going to start getting wise. And then the people who want to basically put the whole world under the kibosh, they're going to start getting reckless, as people do when their best laid plans did not for once go exactly according to how they assumed that they would. And so we just need to be, I think most of all, maybe not most of all, but mentally prepared, as well as in every other way we can be. We need to prepare ourselves and realize also, because I've only started to realize, I'm going to say I've only taken hope, which I think is legitimate hope recently, that all is not lost and all is not recoverable. while we're still breathing, while I'm still here on earth, while you are too, it's a cumulative effort. We might not see victory in our lifetimes, but who knows? But even if not, I want to feel that I've done all that I could and just contributed what I could. And some of that is in talking. In fact, most of that is in talking. Maybe all of that is in just talking. And even though it might seem like, we're just spinning our wheels, having a big chin wag, but it's the right kind of talking at the right things, and from talking to other people, I see that people need to be sometimes reminded of what's a useful thing to talk about and what's just idle jibber jabber, and then how to refocus. And then, because I have a tendency to do this, make things more complicated than they need to be, bring things back, keep things focused on track, and don't overcomplicate something, but equally don't make it too simple. But as they often said, make something as complex as it needs to be to explain it properly, but no more complex than it needs to be. So anyway, look, sorry about that. I said that I would read Lily's comment, second comment. Then I asked her to. I said, I don't think so, but tell me please. And she said, 1975, Paul Fussell, Fussell. Now I'm wondering whether that might be meant to be Russell, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, she says, I need to read it again because it really lingers. And also on the list, Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. The title makes me understand that it sounds like it's a very sad book. And then she has in brackets, who survived the war. I only know of his book, The White Goddess. Sounds interesting as well. Sounds like something that might have some uplifting stuff in it. So look, Lily's there in the chat, and the trouble is, oftentimes I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, that oftentimes, even in normal videos, it does not allow me to click on somebody's icon and go to their channel. There are some people, it just does not allow me to do that. I know in the chat it doesn't allow people to do that, but Lily has a spanner, a blue spanner, meaning that she ought to be, if she would like, to put a link to her channel there in the chat, in case she hasn't done already, and people can go and check out her stuff. And, I find she's very gently spoken, and her videos have this kind of picture postcard quality to them. And there's oftentimes, I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at or what the thing is in reference to, but it has a sort of a poetic and vignette type aspect to it. I admire the aesthetic, And I think she said as well that she oftentimes is restricted by the amount of memory she has to deal with her storage space or something like that. So she does with it what she can. I'd be interested to see what would happen if she ever had, something with more space or power to it. I'll read some of your comments now, and I'll start maybe thinking about winding it down or wrapping it up then. Right, well, Vingel says I should get going now. Might catch the next or the rest later. Take care, everyone. Okay, cheers for now. And Moda says, oh yeah, well, Lily, I was nosing around your channel and good stuff. I watch Gerald, sorry. Celente, is that it? Quite a character, huh? Yes, I can't. It's all right. Yeah, Tom says, "Count your blessings. You didn't read books about World War II." I mean, I think I've read some, but I've read some things about it rather. But I'm now thinking that maybe there's a lot of things that look. I'm always learning. Put it that way. Always learning, and getting more grief and more aghast at the things I learn. Oh, well, listen, come on, man. Oh, yes. Well, I certainly know. Look, he's still alive. I'll put his name up there, right? But right? You know that, like, I'll put it this way, right? Like on Shootbit, like all of his stuff is completely banned in all of Europe, IP blocked. So you can imagine how this place treats it. You know what I'm saying? But if people don't know who that guy is, people need to catch up. Although a lot of people figured that he reneged on some things towards, in his later years, but however he did, he made great contributions. No, Lily is saying Paul Fussell, Fussell. Okay. Okay. Stephen says America has been at war for 93% of its existence, 222 out of 239 years of being a nation. Perhaps that was the reason they called America the Great Experiment, creating a nation of endless war. Yeah. Maybe the experiment had many things they were studying at once and many utilities and outcomes. But we can see, like, one thing, and I sort of said it before, but I think this is a sort of just a nugget for you that might be useful to kind of churn around. One of their tactics, which we have basically had no defense against whatsoever, is that their military strategies, let's call them, generally have a lifespan that is longer than the average human lifespan, the average individual human lifespan. So it literally goes over a human being's head because it was kicked into the air. I'm thinking of a football on a trajectory. It was kicked into the air before a human was born, and it didn't even land until the human left and went off. Right. So he was always just flying over his head. He never even saw the start of it, never saw the end of it. And somebody always assumes that the things happen within his own lifetime, within his own lifetime. I mean, that's something that makes something on such a grand scale that almost no one ever considers stepping back so far as that to try and get in a big picture view. Did I read off the rest of that? I did. Okay. I like this name. Duterte fan says the end of the 60s when the, in quotes, Jesus freaks became notorious. Yeah, well, they were looking for a different morality or spirituality, I suppose, on the back of the 60s and their minds being blown by Timothy Leary. And that was a deliberate attack on the baby boomer generation. I'll say this to you as well, right, in case I forget, because this is a useful phrase. What they have done is they have interfered with the natural life cycle of the human animal. Human beings don't like to think that we are animals, but that's how you interrupt the propagation of a species. You interrupt its natural life cycle, and you get into the stages of its life cycle, and you arrest or you arrest them or halt them permanently. And so they like to break the chain of information between each generation so that they become lost and confused and detached from what would used to have been or could have been whenever it might have been. All the proper instructions that aren't as hard coded in the animal that likes to think that it resides above its own instincts. As JC once said to me, the riddle of the Sphinx is man is but an animal that thinks. The other one is like, the baby that crawls on 4 legs, and then the animal that walks on 2, and then he walks on 3. But it's actually a lot better, and even in his accent, the way he sort of says it. But people don't like to think of us as animals, and that's what we are. People get offended if you say that to them. And so all the same tricks that work on other animals and species and fauna, work on the human animal. So they broke the information connection between the parents of the baby boomers and the baby boomers. So the baby boomers thought our parents are fuddy-duddies, they're harsh taskmasters, they're too stern, they don't love people. All they do is they talk about duty and honor and responsibility. Well, we're tired of that. We want to have a good time, and we want to hold hands and be friends and love each other and all this sort of stuff, which might sound okay. But you know what happens? They twist that and they twist that and they break the connection. And before you know it, you have a generation of very, very self-indulgent, selfish people. Not all, of course, but that's what was the intention of creating. And then they went on to have children, and they felt like, well, my children are now my possessions, and they should do as I say. I am now the one in charge. Not all, not all, not all. Some are great parents. And then these same self-styled hippies who wanted to go on and change the world, man, and just make the world like a happy place, and remain in a sort of infantile state of mind. Well, of course, as they grew older into their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, these were the very same people then who became completely completely wrapped up and tied into the corporate structure. And they defend it at all costs because they know that their pension is wrapped up in all the speculation on the stock exchange and the stocks and shares of the corporations they have. And there may be some boomers still working, but most of them are out of the workforce, and they want to keep their pensions, and they feel that their pensions are being undermined, and they certainly don't want the next generations coming up after them saying we need to pull this thing apart immediately. So suddenly we find we have, obviously in general, speaking in general terms, we have completely diametrically opposed incentives and motivations going on, but nobody can quite bring themselves to say, so what we have here in one way of looking at it is we have intergenerational warfare fomented and stoked by people who are doing their best to basically be above it. Isn't it amazing that you can interrupt the life cycle of any species or animal and gradually change things or get people dependent on things in such a way as the parents will attack the young and the young will attack the parents? Amazing. And so that brings me to another one of their tactics. They always use the energy of one of their enemies against the energy of another one of their enemies. But now we are entering a situation where they do know, they recognize that several of the enemies which they have set against each other might just go, hold on a moment. Do you think that there is one particular adversary that we might just, if not momentarily or temporarily, all turn and face? They know that's a distinct possibility. And I can say, obviously, not a lot more on that from here. But that was just, look, it just goes to show, right, in regard to the Jesus freaks. But anyway, and here we are. 1914 volunteers, 1915 they registered all men 18 to 65 first time. Yeah. And as I said to you about the time in 1914, well, actually I've gone on too long, so I'll just say this: the white feather. When I read about English women in the street handing white feathers to men, maybe they're British as well, handing to men and saying, basically, you are a coward, you're not a man if you're here. The fact that you are here means that you must be a coward. Get over there to Normandy or wherever exactly they're being sent and sacrifice yourself for me and for your country. And it just goes to show there was this kind of, whipping or shaming. And I was extremely angry and full of aggravation and grief and angst when I read about that, and I imagined, of course, these kind of suffragette kind of women doing that. And I think a lot of people will know exactly what I'm thinking of with that loaded term, a suffragist or a suffragette. And I think many of us are here now, and we know well who those kind of people were. Always stoking, always fomenting. But yeah, once people stopped volunteering, then they said, "Listen, if you don't volunteer, we're going to volunteer you." If they couldn't shame them over there. Right, Moda says, back to work. I'm dyeing the leather sofa and lazy boy. Wow. Realization, says Tom Twain. Brave and hasty, 1915. Sorry, 1914, brave and hasty. 1915, realization and absolute trepidation. I like that. It's like a line or two from a poem. Right, I'm thinking about wrapping it up now pretty soon anyway. So I'll just read through these comments and I'll say thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you tomorrow maybe. Tom Twain says, the lizards are making catastrophic mistakes out of desperation. The war will be over by Christmas, they said, equals trust the science. Yeah, the story about the first Christmas in World War One is heartbreaking as well. You know, they put down the weapons and just played a game of football. I do believe that story. Tom says doomsayers are too hasty with their predictions. World War Two was known in the UK as the phony war because nothing happened for months. Wow. Okay. Stephen says, um, I just no, I'm not going to say it. Sorry about that, but I'm just not going to allow you to, um, put too many personal details. Do you know what I mean? But if she's in any way, oh well, okay, no, she works there. Okay, hope everything's all right though, and congrats to her if she's helping people. Um, call says Stephen. Okay, I know. I do try and make sure that something scans all right and see if I can figure out if anything's there. But I hope you understand. Gerald, the Italian one who curses. Is that what that means? Um, and Tom says, John, we are the least capable animal on this planet. Yeah, well, it's along the lines of the more they think they're wise or profess themselves to be wise, the more they proved or demonstrated or something like that themselves to be fools or found themselves to be fools, something like that. But definitely along the lines of pride before a fall, or the more one thinks one is intelligent, the more one comes to a sticky end. Stephen says, my accent is similar to JC. I drag vowels out a bit more. Lol. He has tamed his accent quite well. Okay. I was I'll say this. Somebody, so in the X spaces that I was in, somebody said, "Oh, I went over to your channel and I listened to," and he said, "Oh, am I saying his name right?" And he said, "I listened to the conversation you had with JC," and I think it was the one that's titled "A Second Conversation with JC." And he said he listened to the whole thing and he really liked it. And he was a young guy. I think he's in his roughly in his mid-20s, and he's been through a few things in his life already. And he said he really found it fascinating and learning about things that I was learning about at the time, about Queen Sophia going to Russia and stuff like that. And we were talking a bit about the Roman and Byzantine Empire and what it was and that sort of stuff. So I don't know. Well, I got a bit of a thrill out of it. I always like when somebody's listening to something, and I listened to it again there as well, and I really appreciate it. I hope JC, if he's out there, I haven't spoken to him in about, I don't know how long exactly. It was more than 6 months now. It could be a year. Hope he's doing all right. And I'm going to say this, right? I would like to speak to him again. Like we sort of fell out, but it was over nothing. I raised my voice to him, but maybe I'm not sure if he raised his voice, but he might have became exasperated with me. But it was over, and like we didn't say any harsh words really to each other. But so I'm saying that because we could, I think, with very little effort, sort of smooth that over. And I often think, oh, I wonder what he'd think of this now and that sort of thing, that sort of way. So I would like to reconcile and talk to him again at some stage, hopefully. And I know a lot of you have said that and would like to as well. Okay, Lily says, I'll be reading a letter about that Christmas, a rare eyewitness. Excellent. Right. If you're going to do a video on that, I look forward to that. That seems like a good note to end on. I'll kind of give it about 60 seconds now to wind down and just see if any last comments come in. Stephen says, yeah, cheers, JC, if you're out there. I've seen him in comment sections, although I can't remember whose stream it was. Perhaps it was Anomaly live stream. Okay. Right. Well, I'll, do you know what? I never tend to do this. I played in with the last part of Live Not by Lies. Will I see if I can kind of do it again back to front and do the first part of Live Not by Lies? I'll come back now to the last few comments before I play it, but I just want to see if I can get that up because I used to think, there's no point in doing this sort of format thing, but sometimes it's nice to just play out with something. And I'm going to say, like, I've been on Twitter, like, I think things are different if you
verify, you get unlocked more features, or if you pay for premium, but I'm just not going to do that. You can put up longer videos, but as it stands, you're limited to something like it says 2 minutes 20, but it's really 2 minutes 19. So you have to truncate things or make things short. Actually, being constrained sometimes helps your creativity. But I've been putting up a few clips of my things like that. And so it's kind of making me kind of look back at some of my past catalog and feel like, well, look, not everyone's seen this already, so I might as well put up stuff. And, some people like it. And I kind of go, okay, great. And I'm not trying to boast or anything, but when I look back at a video that I've done, like say a year, 2 years, or a bit more than that sometimes, I kind of go, oh, okay, I'm kind of glad now, because I sometimes don't even remember making it, but I kind of say, oh yeah, I do like that. I'm looking at it from as though I was the third person. And I'm not trying to boast, but I kind of go, I like listening to that, even though, of course, it's weird when you're listening to your own voice, right? But I'm getting a little bit less, I like it because I'm getting a little bit less shy about a little bit of self-promotion, if you know what I mean. Anyway, what I'm trying to do here is to see if I can open up the first half of Live Not by Lies. It's Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And the piano music, I will say, it's from, Owen Benjamin. And I know, like, I haven't listened to him in a long, long time, and I doubt that ever will. As far as I'm concerned, if he was genuine in the beginning, he's awful now, and he's a charlatan, or he's a money grubber or whatever. So I'm just not interested, really. And as a general rule, I would say, look, it pretty much happens to everybody. Anybody who gets tainted with money. And my advice to anybody, in case anybody hasn't figured it out, but there might be younger people, you got to learn sometime. Like, everybody's going to get corrupted or get compromised at some stage, assuming that they were sincere from the start. So never place your faith in people. And as soon as they start leading you astray, you're going to have to recognize it and just stop listening to them, But every individual, you never know who they are. They'll lead you some part of the way. But there's no one man or woman that's going to lead you all the way. And you really got to look out for when they get compromised. You've got to be always waiting for it without being too ready to jump down their throats. But you got to be waiting for it. Just kind of go, I'm going to move on. I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to look elsewhere for interesting things or whatever, Right. I'll just read the last few comments, and then I'll play us out, with the beginning of Live Not by Lies by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So, cheers, Reg. Cheers, Stephen. Cheers, Lily. Stephen says, I agree 100% with Owen Benjamin. Very, very early, he was... Oh, yeah, well, what I'm saying, you're saying about Owen Benjamin. Very, very early, he was hilarious, and he was waking up people. But then he ended up clutching, my precious. Yeah, that's exactly it. And Tom Twain says, John, the past existed. The future may yet exist, but I doubt the present ever exists. Well, okay, I'll accept that. It's gone before you're even noticing it. We're always living at least 200 milliseconds in the past anyway. Okay, thanks everybody, and I'll play us out. And hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow in the X Spaces, and bye for now.
At one time we dared not even to whisper. Now we write and read samizdat, and sometimes when we gather in the smoking room at the Science Institute, we complain frankly to one another. What kind of tricks are they playing on us, and where are they dragging us? Gratuitous boasting of cosmic achievements, while there is poverty and destruction at home, propping up remote, uncivilized regimes, fanning up civil war. And we recklessly fostered Mao Zedong at our expense, and it will be we who are sent to war against him and will have to go. Is there any way out? And they put on trial anybody they want, and they put sane people in asylums. Always they, and we are powerless. Things have almost reached rock bottom. A universal spiritual death has already touched us all, and physical death will soon flare up and consume both us and our children. But as before, we still smile in a cowardly way and mumble with our tongues tied. But what can we do to stop it? We haven't the strength. We have been so hopelessly dehumanized for today's modest ration of food, we are willing to abandon all our principles, our souls, and all the efforts of our predecessors, and all the opportunities for our descendants. But just don't disturb our fragile existence. We lack staunchness, pride, and enthusiasm. We don't even fear universal nuclear death, and we don't fear a third world war. We have already taken refuge in the crevices. We just fear acts of civil courage.